Welcome to another episode of Digital First Podcast. I am your host, Akhona Mbhele, and today with us we have Quinnlyn, who is a creative designer here at Jorin. Quinn, welcome.
Hi, this is so exciting. I've never been on a podcast before. I feel so fancy.
So you recently graduated from the University of Pretoria. Can you tell us about your uni experience?
Yes, so I went to UP. I got a BA in information design, which is basically like graphic design, except with more stuff in it. It's more along the lines of multimedia.
Yes.
So we did everything from filming, to photography, to logos and branding, to web, to characterization. We did a whole bunch. There was even one project that we did 3D and stayed on campus till 2 a.m.
Oh my God.
trying to fix it and figure it out and get things done. But it was an interesting experience. Yeah.
So you talked about learning to make logos. What makes a great logo?
I think what makes a great logo is something that is simple and instantly recognizable. So if you think about like McDonald's, you see that M, you know what you're getting.
Yes.
Nike, it's iconic. Apple, it's iconic. So something that is inherently reflective of the brand and something that is easily recognizable for a bunch of different people.
How exactly should a logo reflect a brand value, and how important is it?
Well, when you start designing a logo for a company, you don't just hop into it all willy-nilly. You've got to sit down with this company. You've got to ask, okay, what does your brand stand for? How do you communicate in your brand? What are your values? What are your ethos? And that very hugely ties into how you design your logo. So for example, you're not going to give a beauty salon the same vibe of a logo as you would like a tire store.
Yes.
So if the brand is something that is stable and strong and you can rely on them, something like an insurance company, you'd give a logo that is grounded, that has strong shapes in it, that has a strong typeface that will convey that sort of idea. Whereas something like a beauty brand would be something softer, something maybe with a little curl to it, something cute, a more gentle looking logo. So there are ways to build shapes and build type that can reflect those values and ethos.
Okay, can you just take us through the creative process of creating a logo or a web design from beginning to end?
Well, it starts there. It starts with your values and your ethos and your tone of voice. And then from there, you build your logo, like I've just said. But then from your logo, everything else pops out. Everything else stems from that logo. So if you have, for example, let's have a look at Madmaxer, né? So here we have super strong, bold typography.
Yes.
We've got very sort of stylized shapes, so that you pull all the way through. You end up with a typeface, and that goes through everything. So all of your copy ends up in that typeface. You can take pieces of the logo, for example, this spiky hair shape, turn that into an illustration or into a pattern. Everything can stem from your logo, and that keeps a sense of cohesiveness, a sense of unity throughout the brand, a shape language even, to build something really strong, really consistent, and that you then obviously can take into your web.
Can you tell me about a project that you were involved in, a design project that you feel the most proud of, and why that specific project stands out for you?
Oh, that's one I did in uni.
Yeah.
So we were given a task to create a brand based on a language.
Okay.
And it could be anything. So I picked Gaelic because my family comes many generations ago, comes from Ireland, so I thought it was a really interesting place to start. And I ended up building this whole brand called Clover and Thistle. It was an arts festival, and you take sort of the iconic things about a culture or a language. So in Gaelic, for example, there's a certain typeface that was used in Gaelic. So you take that and you break off from there. There's certain iconography that can go along with it, like the 4-leaf clover or a thistle. That's where the name comes from, Clover and Thistle.
Yeah.
You can take inspiration from, I took inspiration from postage stamps. stamps. So my logo ended up looking a bit like a postage stamp. I thought that was a very interesting one to do. And then once you've got your brand, which I then did, so it had all of these greens and oranges, really earthy colors, and I pulled it into an app for doing herbal remedies, which is something that stems a lot from Irish culture and Gaelic culture. I thought that was quite a cool one.
Yeah, it seems like a great project. So from a creative designer point of view, can you share maybe a rebranding project that you thought was really dope?
Yes, absolutely. Checkers springs to mind first. I know we've all walked into a Checkers 8 years ago, and it's not the best looking, and it feels a little bit grimy when you walk in. But now when you walk into a Checkers, it's a whole experience.
Yeah.
And I think that stems a lot from. So they started off really budget friendly. That was the point of Checkers. You could get everything you needed in one store for not your whole salary's worth of money. And then they kept that, but then they added making you feel as if you're buying something luxurious. And the way that they went about that was very clever. So they got Gordon Ramsay in. And
the top chef.
Yes, so Kitchen Nightmares, Hell's Kitchen, that guy. And he came in and he endorsed certain products. So this cheese here and this cut of meat here from Checkers. And that made people think, oh, okay, Gordon Ramsay is endorsing this, it must be good. Then they got Nathaniel in, bring it into a South African context. And he's a comedian, so he was very funny in all of their ads, so then it brings that sense of South African humor to it. Then they ended up getting the Michelin star chef Jan Hendrik van der Westhuizen. And so we have the marrying of a really high-skill chef like Gordon Ramsay and the South African humor of obviously a South African, put together in one guy, and he made his whole range, that Forage and Feast range that you get at Checkers now. So the whole rebrand was very smart, very clever. You get someone who's good at what they do, who knows what they're doing, to endorse something like food, and it immediately elevates the brand. It was very, very clever on their part.
What are some of the challenges that you go through when creating a logo or a web design, and how do you overcome them?
I think people overcomplicate it a lot in their heads. I think they try and put everything that they have on their screen, and then that comes across as quite overwhelming. Like a couple of our government websites have the information is so tightly packed that it feels really overwhelming to try and read it.
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. No one's going to sit there and read a whole paragraph. We're lazy by nature. We don't want to struggle like that. We want quick, bite-sized pieces of information that are well-balanced, that have harmony, that are pleasing to look at. And it's not difficult to do that. You just have to follow design principles. You've got to make sure it's balanced. You've got to make sure there's breathing room. You've got to make sure there's consistency throughout everything. You've got to make sure that your brand comes through on your website. And typography and color do a lot for that. The shape language does a lot for that. So if you have, for example, I found a reference photo for this. There was a website that had all of these circles because it was cucumbers. So there's all these circles, but then the call to action buttons were square, and it didn't fit nicely. It didn't sit. It didn't sort of flow nicely in itself. So the simplest thing is to change your shapes to match whatever you're doing. So they changed the square shapes to this round icon, and suddenly the whole website just flowed so nicely. It matched so beautifully. So don't overcomplicate it. Be smart. Be clever. You don't have to work super hard or overthink things to have a beautiful, cohesive package of things. You just have to be clever and tweak little things to make it match and match up and stay consistent. And that, I think, makes a really good website.
Queen, that was very insightful. So before we close, can you share some tips and tricks for a great logo design?
Tips and tricks for great logo design. I would say keep your shape language simple. Circles, squares, and triangles, everything's built on that. Make sure it's balanced. Make sure it's harmonious. Make sure that the vibe of whatever elements you've designed visually matches your typography. And keep it simple. There's no need to overcomplicate it. make sure that you can use it in every context. So it has to be able to be seen as like a social media icon that's this small, as well as something that can be printed really big. So having something that you can modularly fit together, like Lego bricks, you can build your own little puzzle pieces. I think that's what makes a really good logo, is you can use it in any context.
Okay, Quinnlyn, thank you so much for joining us today. We've come to an end of an episode. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.
3, 2, 1.